Howdy, folks. Happy Wednesday. Happy hump day. We are here. I am styling and profiling with my new hairdo. Anyway, at least I have
let that one go.
And we have some good stuff to talk about today. We'll preview the Islanders and Florida Panthers and some other news going on. It does not look that like they're going to be Canadian hub cities based on the announcement that came out yesterday from Reuters about the border, but we'll talk about that in a few minutes. Russ, go ahead with the pre-show.
So even though Jan just told me offline this is nothing new, there is a good debate going on in the New York area, and that's who's better, Sam Darnold or Daniel Jones, the two quarterbacks for Jets and Giants. It wasn't going on 2 years ago, Jan, I can tell you that.
Well, Daniel Jones wasn't drafted 2 years ago, so.
Right, that's my point. It is still a worthy topic because they've both gotten through. Darnold a few seasons, Jones is first. And the interesting thing is, I wrote about it on sportsology.com, people can check it out. I looked at it from the negative aspect because it's too easy to look at it from how many touchdowns did the guy have and how many interceptions and how many yards did they gain. I looked at it as what kind of weapons does the guy have? How much time does this guy have to throw? And actually they both are victims of bad GMs, bad coaching, and
bad offensive lines.
Yeah, bad offensive lines, not putting enough talent around them. Like at the end of the day, you could look at both of these quarterbacks and say they should be able to make it in the NFL. And I'm telling you, there is still a chance that Joe Douglas with the Jets goes in a completely different direction after this year because he hasn't given Darnold enough tools and still drafts a quarterback because he wants his own, because he'll have 3 years left in his own little reign there contract-wise. I just look at it that way, and I look at both teams. The one thing that stands out about Daniel Jones is the fumbling. I get it. But he's a pretty good quarterback and actually did way better than the naysayers ever thought. And I look at Darnold and I say, God, they don't even allow him to throw downfield. He's not even in the top 7 in like deep balls in the league. And he had Robbie Anderson. Well, that is a function of Adam Gase. And that's where these guys are really hamstrung.
Go ahead, Jen.
So a couple things. So I think Jones, the issue with Jones was, like we talk about a lot of players, is where he was selected in the draft, right? Because he went 6th overall, the viewpoint is that the Giants reached at that point in time to take him. If he had gone later with their second first-round pick when they traded up, nobody would have blinked, but I don't think he would have been there. But Jones, I think, showed last year when he took over from Manning that he may not have been a waste of a pick at 6. I think, clearly, as you mentioned, jury is still out on both of them. You taking the negative side just shocks me to no surprise at all, Russ, knowing you is the way you are. You and I have similar views at times on the Jets in terms of their viewpoint. I am not as down on Douglas as you are. I do agree. Look, a couple things. One, I think you guys both know I do a Jets podcast, so I've given my views on this a lot of times.
A Jet is a Jet relay.
I don't think they've done a particularly good job of building things around him. I do think they've made incremental improvements to the offensive line. I do think with the draft being as deep as it was in terms of wide receiver, they needed to get more than just Mims. I was the guy like in the 7th round going get KJ Hill would be a perfect slot guy for them. And they passed him by trading down and getting another cornerback, which they need. I do think they should have brought back Robbie Anderson. I thought Anderson, the second half of last year, had a really good second half, but he's done that the last couple of years. So the question is why can't he do it in the first half? On the flip side with Jones, Nate Solder was pretty bad last year. The offensive line was pretty horrific for the Giants, but you do have Saquon, which takes a ton of pressure off of him potentially. Sure. You do have, there is some moderate talent, but Sterling Shepard was hurt last year. Yep. Got a lot of guys who were banged up. So, in my opinion, I think there's definitely upside potential for both of them. Mike and I were just talking that, regardless of what Bills Mafia wrote, that, Josh Allen's not the number 1 quarterback in Buffalo. He is the best quarterback in the New York, New Jersey area, in my opinion. Although
right now,
there's definitely questions about him as well, in terms of his accuracy, et cetera. But I do think there's the potential of both guys taking leaps this year. And what also is a benefit for Darnold is he's still awfully young. He's still younger than Joe Burrow, and he has 2 years under his belt already.
I think mono, which is a big deal. He had
the mono set him back, right? And I was at that first game.
Me
where
too.
I don't think he played badly. And if the Jets hadn't lost C.J. Mosley, they win that game over Buffalo.
Right, but he still wasn't the same. Like we could see even in that game now.
No, you look back on it now and you go,
Yes.
well, okay, you kind of see signs that something was up.
I think the fairest way to compare the two is compare their first years. And if you compare their first years, Daniel Jones had an advantage of having Barkley, even though Barkley was hurt for half of the year. He did have Barkley. The offensive lines were comparably bad.
Yeah.
I think Darnold had a better rookie year than Jones did. Jones had a good one. I think Darnold had a very good one. And last year was a throwaway. Unfortunately, the first half of it was because of the mono. So I think both are good. Jones, I think, is better than I thought he was going to be.
He's better than I thought because I didn't know him.
Right, but the thing is, and I puzzle about this. After a year where Darnold gets killed because their offensive line sucked and they did patchwork work on it, they go out and I don't think they really did enough to address the offensive line.
Nope.
And the Bills did last year. Allen had more time. He still ran too much because he likes to do that. But at the end of the year, he was throwing more because he had protection. And I think he'll have protection this year. And I think that could be a detriment to Darnold's career and to Jones' career if they don't get offensive lines that can protect them.
Look, I mean, I have no problem taking Becton. I actually like the pick of Becton. I didn't have a problem.
Are you going to have him on his blind side as a rookie? No, you're not going to do that.
You're going to put Fant there originally, and we don't know what the jury's going to be out on Fant.
And he stinks.
We're going to find out, right? If they have to,
he has a track record.
Well,
okay.
Anyway, did you want to touch on the other thing?
Yeah, so one more thing that just unfortunately came across the wire just before we started the show. So for those of us who grew up in the age of TBS and the Superstation and grew up in terms of watching baseball on cable, Claudell Washington, who passed away at 65, and for those of us, Mike being a Yankee fan, Russ and I being Met fans, he's one of the players that played on both of those squads. Yeah. Guy, decent left-handed bat from the plate, decent outfielder. Yep. Granted, his heydays were more with the Braves, but he had a little bit of a decent run with both squads. And one of those guys that everybody mentions, the name, you immediately remember seeing him playing the field and at the plate. 65 is still very young to pass away. But those of us who were kids in the late 70s, early 80s, quite well remember the Claudell Washington. I wouldn't call it era, but in terms of his playing time, especially with Atlanta.
But he was a rookie with the A's. I knew he was with the A's.
Yeah, but I remember him mostly with that Braves team with Bob Turner and Dale Murphy. We got a chance to watch that team in the early 80s, coincidentally managed by Joe Torre, which is always weird because that was when in 82 when they made their postseason run. I think they lost to the Cardinals in 82 in the NLCS. So, but that's sad. I mean, 65 is way.
He was like a Bobby Bonds light. Like he had speed, he had power, he was good in the field, he had a good arm. He wasn't great at anything, but he was a likable guy.
Yes.
That's all. But it's a shame.
Okay.
All right.
Back wearing the Team Europe jersey.
I am. I think this is one of the better uniforms. I'm deciding to wear hockey jerseys because we're still a hockey season.
Well, if it was the green version, we'd be able to see what's on your screensaver because Russ was wearing a green T-shirt before, and it was showing like the
New York Jets field. That's what.
It was wearing. It was a green. There's a green screen effect thing.
I'll show it at the end of the show. It's really bizarre.
Should I go to my closet and get my Team North America JT Miller jersey so we can match?
Here you go. One of the things I'm going to do this for a second. I'm just going to get rid of you guys for a second. I've been wanting to do that for a long time. But okay, so what you might not see on this, I know about this jersey, is on the sleeve here. Let me put it up there. You can see it lists all the European countries.
That's cool.
Yeah, I never realized that was the case until I got the jersey.
But the logo looks like a bad Finnish coat of arms.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if you guys remember this or not, but I was remembering the World Cup of Hockey. I was really pissed off that they didn't have an anthem. Remember this?
Right, I remember that.
Right, I remember that.
So I went and I combined the 7 anthems of the teams that played into one anthem, which was pretty frigging amazing. I mean, I did. I'll play it for you. We'll end the show today with the Team Europe anthem, but because it's on my
viewership just spiked.
I know everyone's excited, but no, I actually took the anthems, put them together, and I sent it to the NHL. And there's and I got like responses, and they were considering it, but the reason they didn't do it, what I was told, is that they were just like they were on a run, and they didn't want to like have no superstition or whatever. That was
Right.
but they like the idea. I thought there should be like some kind of anthem for them.
Russ, they chose that emblem over the bad Finnish coat of arms rather than the Italian coat of arms, which had a pepperoni and some tomatoes in it.
No, but like Team Europe was just lacking. It was lacking marketing. It was lacking pizzazz. They were good, but it was just lacking. Like, of all the teams, it had nothing going for it outside of just playing on the ice. There was no marketing whatsoever.
I have to say, just before we start, the best video that I've seen on Twitter in the last couple days was the video of when Vegas opened, the first or second day, a guy sitting at the One Arm Bandit wearing a mask and smoking, and he's taking his cigarette, moving the mask, taking a drag, and then putting the mask back and blowing the smoke through the mask. Nothing says entertainment
Nothing says Vegas like that. Like that. All right, ready, guys? Here we go. We got some news to start the show with here. All right. It's June 10th. Yes.
It is 10th. Yes.
Hello, Hockey World. It is Wednesday, June 10th, 2020.
I am Michael Agello, and look at my hair.
Did you get a haircut?
I'm Jan Levine, and there's a reason why it's singular for Mike.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology. You'll find out at the end of the show why I'm wearing a sweatshirt in the summer.
Hold your eyes.
I think I'm the only one who actually really needs haircuts in this group. But
mine needs a cut. It's not
really.
I just got one about a week ago. Somebody came over to do my daughter's hair and was able to just get a quick buzz. So I no longer look like Dilbert's boss on steroids with the hair.
My daughter's been cutting the back of my hair so I don't get a mullet.
right.
But, now it's starting to like mushroom out into all one length.
I was looking like Doug Flutie. I had the friggin' moulet. It was disgusting.
Well, I'm heading towards like Dorothy Hamill area. Like that's what's going on with my hair.
I'm gonna make you do the Hamill Camel then.
Yeah, there you go. I've done it a couple times. Hurts. All right, here we go. So let's start with some news. Apparently, and I mean we've been talking about this for a while.
Well,
I've been looking for confirmation, but Mike, the breaking news about Vegas, perhaps being.
Well, let's go with the other sports.
Maybe being the only. I'm hearing maybe being the only hub city.
Okay.
well, I mean, if I hadn't seen that yet, but if it broke in the last hour or so, I've been at the
I'm starting
bar.
to hear it. I got a couple texts about it. A couple people in the chat were talking about it too. I don't know that it's official or anything like that, but the rumor I heard was that they're going to announce Vegas as a hub city and perhaps the only hub city, which I think is really risky.
Well, the Hub 2 rinks, I don't think it's that risky. I think the bubble effect is a good effect. The only reason I wanted to bring up the other sports, so like MLS is starting, right? And they're going to have a 54-game schedule. It's a tournament. They're all going to Disney. So now you've got the NBA and MLS and Disney. That's way too many people.
And they're bidding on like 11 other events I saw also supposedly that they're trying to get down there as well.
Right.
But
I worry about that.
Disney. Here's the thing about that area, Orlando area, though. You're not going to find more hotels, and you're not going to find less people going there. I mean, there's still
fewer people walking around without masks either. Like,
here's my one concern with Vegas also, right? Is time zone, right?
Oh,
You're 3 hours behind. You'll be thinking about scheduling games. You'd rather have one hub East Coast, one hub West Coast.
I don't know. That's an advantage. They could show
The 10 a.m. games.
10 a.m. is tough for games.
Jan, they don't really care. Honestly, they're not going to show primetime games at 10 a.m., but they have to get through these games. So guess what? There'll be 10 a.m.
I mean,
Yeah, but
I do think you're right, Jan. I think there should be a Western and an Eastern hub city.
but this
And I've been hearing a lot of like, despite all of what I've been saying, and despite all reason, really, in my mind, I've been hearing a lot about Toronto the last couple of days.
Well, and see, that I think was shot down by what happened, what was reported yesterday. Even though, and I respect David Pagnotta and his sources, but Reuters came out yesterday and said that more than likely, the 14-day quarantine and the non-essential travel ban between the U.S. and Canada will be extended to July 31st. If that happens, and we have heard nothing about a exemption or essential status for professional athletes, I think that buries Canadian hub cities.
I think so too.
So now Pagnotta says that he doesn't think so, but it's not like only Canadian teams are going to play in that hub city. It's going to be U.S. teams, and if all those players have to 14-day quarantine, forget it. It's not happening.
Right.
So, I mean, the only thing I'm questioning regarding Vegas as the one and only hub city is where are they playing besides the T-Mobile Arena? Because they'd have to have a second venue. Are they playing? I mean, I know that there's the rink at the Orleans, but that's not set up for.
There is also a practice arena somewhere around there.
Yeah, but are they? But remember, the whole thing was they wanted buildings with NHL sight lines, and if they don't have, like, if they can't play all those games at
Why can't they?
Because they only have one rink.
Yeah, but they can practice at the Orleans. You could play 3 or 4 games a day on the T-Mobile rink. Why can't you do that?
I think you're extending the schedule a lot further if you're limiting it to 2 games. I mean, remember, it's 4 series per conference. That's 8 games.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, are you going to want to have one day alternating every time? Or
there just won't be any days off, probably. That's all.
Yeah,
but no, I think you're right.
There'll be days off for teams, but there won't be days off for action, is what I mean.
I think there's not going to be any days off for action for sure, but I do think that they need to consider, if you do have one city, I agree with you. I think one city doesn't make any sense because of the scheduling.
Now the thing is, and I remember what John Tavares said when right after the announcement of the 2014 playoff, and the reason I bring him up is because he's on the return to play committee. He talked about the fact that the players want from the hub city not only it to be safe, but also that players don't have to be shut in their hotels for weeks on end, that they can actually go out and have, live a life, basically. The thing is, how can they do that in Vegas unless they're sequestered in that particular area, away from all the people going to the casinos? How can they do that?
Unless they take over a hotel or two, and
that's what I think they'll do.
And they sequester everything internally within the hotel, and the activities could be limited to the players that are in the hotel. Especially if you're going to have 12 teams there, you're going to have enough people to be able to do that. Especially if they start allowing some family members, which they've talked about, maybe a couple being part of the equation as well.
Right, and
that's what I was suggesting. Remember, Mike, if they take over the Orleans, they could shuttle people over to T-Mobile as games start. They could practice at the Orleans. All of that's workable, and it's actually not that much contact. Still, there are going to be some people that wander out and see a movie or whatever. Yeah. I mean, the Orleans has all that inside, but still, there's going to be some going outside. There's no doubt about it.
Think of it this way also. You're only going to have 16 teams there for the first round. Those 8 teams at the top 4, I mean, unless maybe they could play those play-in games at a different location. Yeah. So then once the 8 teams that lose in that play-in round move out, then they move in.
That's true. That's not out of the question, I guess.
I mean, all the logistics still have to be figured out. I mean, that major hurdle still has to be tackled as part of Phase 3, and then especially Phase 4.
Yeah, Pierre LeBrun reported yesterday that they really haven't. They're negotiating on when Phase 3 and when Phase 4 begin, but they haven't come to any agreement yet. And like Phase 2, they only came to an agreement a few days before they made the announcement of when Phase 2 would be implemented. So I mean, right now they really don't have any concrete dates. And like we said before, Russ. The one thing about the NBA plan is we have concrete dates. We know we can point to a certain date. Here's where it's going to start. I think that's the only thing that the NHL has done now. I said a week ago it was fine, but now we're getting into mid-June, and people need to know when these games are going to start.
And I think that's where the other sports are going to put pressure on them, because now, MLS has dates out. Even NASCAR has dates, like Martinsville – I think it was like June 16th or June 20th. They're going to have fans in the stands there. So there's going to be actual fans at a sporting event there. So the fact that these other sports now are stepping up and doing this, it is going to force the NHL to come out with better.
I just got a text from a source about this a little bit further. There's nothing confirmed yet, though there are several plans, of course. This is something we've always heard.
Course.
Sure.
But he also said that expect the NHL to announce hub city/cities. And backup cities, so that we might actually. I know it's something that we haven't heard from the NBA, or MLB.
MLB MLB, because they're going to use all the rinks. NBA does not have a backup that we've heard about, but you knew they would have backups for this.
Now it's
possible. Backup cities will be announced though, actually, as well.
Oh, really? They're going to announce them?
It's possible that it's possible that a Canadian city could be listed as a backup city simply because after the playoffs may start in the first week of August, and July 31st, if it drops off at that point, then there's no problem.
I think Edmonton's going to be the backup city because they've had so few instances of the COVID. I think they're actually going to be that. But again, the problem is just because they say, hey, right now this is going to run through the end of July, doesn't mean at the end of July they don't say, hey, it's going to run through middle of August because something else has happened. Like, it's very fluid that way, and that's what will hurt the chances of a Canadian city, I think.
I'll tell you something that's bothering me, and that is, the NHL doing this timeline out a ways. We're still talking, games until August probably. So
yeah,
I really feel as if, today we saw a spike in cases in Florida, and I know that there's different. I know that it's really, we should be looking at spikes in deaths, honestly, because cases are. We're going to see more cases if we test more, and that's fine. Unfortunately, if we see more deaths, that's bad, right? So
and right now, you're going to start to see the spike in cases because of the protests.
The protests also, yeah, no question about it.
Because people were not social distancing, and not everybody was wearing.
Right, like 2 weeks from now, you're going to see a lot of that.
I do have the number, X. So far in June, 6,000 deaths. So it's really not that big of a drop off.
Yeah, it's not. And the question is, will that go up? Because that's something obviously you can track the entire way. That's been tracked the same way, where cases, are not that way. But my feeling is this.
Now, you're right.
My feeling is this: it's getting scarier now out there, right? It's getting scarier now in general, and we all know that. People are relaxing. Some it might be fine. It might be that some theories of weather or summer or heat or whatever. It all might be fine. But if it's not fine, I would rather get these athletes quarantined sooner than later. Based on because if you're going to get them into a quarantine situation, why wait a month when this next month could be the most dangerous month to get this?
Well, I think it was more than coincidental that yesterday, on the same day that report from Reuters came out, the Calgary Flames announced that there was a possibility that they would hold their training camp south of the border. We heard that about Vancouver. And the thing is, though, you think about it this way: 6 of the 7 Canadian teams are in the playoffs. Use Toronto as an example. 20 of their players are in Toronto and participating in Phase 2.
25% of the teams are Canadian.
Right. 2 notable players, Austin Matthews and Frederick Anderson, are in Arizona right now. If they come back, they have to sit for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And then what good does that do? Because if they're playing south of the border.
Yeah, that's the thing, right?
So the NHL really needs to announce these hub cities as quickly as possible so teams can adjust, because they're not getting a special dispensation from the Canadian government. It doesn't appear that that's going to be the case.
Well, here's the report. With Arizona, the 2 players in Arizona. Arizona is now a horrible hotspot, and actually the health department just came out yesterday. They're worried about too many beds filling up. If I'm the Leafs, I'm getting Matthews and Anderson out of there and at least moving them to Buffalo, where I know they could probably rent rink space there and just let them do that, because keeping them in Arizona, just because they're hockey players, at some point, if that state gets bad enough and there's a shutdown, they're going to be stuck there.
Yeah.
And the last thing, I don't want to talk too much about this anymore because I want to get on to hockey. But I want to say this. I want to say this one thing real fast about this. I just lost my train of thought.
Well, while you're thinking,
go ahead. I'll try to get that train back.
Yeah. Russ, we noticed the report from the LA Kings yesterday regarding Jeff Carter having successful core muscle surgery, and the first thing I said, and you beat me to the punch about writing it in our little chat, maybe successful for Carter, not successful for the Kings, but I think the Kings would welcome the fact of walking away from the last 2 years, or at least putting that money on LTIR and not having anything to do with Jeff Carter again.
No question. I mean, there's no question. If you look at the time that it was announced that Carter had an injury to the point where he actually had the surgery, he probably waited, 90 days more than Sidney Crosby waited when he had the same surgery, and he was literally getting operated on the next day, right? Wasn't it like the next day for Crosby?
Yeah,
But it shows you the difference in the players wanting to get back or not in a rush to get back.
Interesting. All right, here's my thought. Here's what I was thinking, and we'll move on. There's a recent study that came. Read a recent article a couple days ago about the price of these of COVID tests. I don't know if you've seen this or not, but like some insurance is not covering it.
Okay.
The the NHL insurance apparently, I would talk to somebody, would cover about half of it, perhaps. But you see, the insurance companies are not covering it unless you have symptoms. So you're talking about if you're just talking about preventative, like, do they have it? These tests could cost like $800 to $1,000 per test.
Yeah, Bettman said
about like, these players being tested every couple of days. How many players you have going on? This is it's an enormous.
When somebody asked Bettman in the conference call a couple of weeks ago about how much testing would cost, he said potentially in the tens of millions.
He did say that number is in and of itself is just staggering. So I heard that there's an NHL's trying to, and like anything, trying to make deals, and they're looking for people who will come in and give them X price for all the tests so that they have it. They don't have to think about it. So it's not
a
like
group discount.
Right, a group discount. I'm sure they'll be able to get something.
Maybe we can get sponsorship. This COVID test is sponsored by. You can put it on air.
Well, maybe they should.
I can't believe it's not butter COVID-19 test.
NHL is always looking for revenue sources. There you go.
Maybe they should wait for the blue light special at Kmart.
I can't believe it's not
Kmart's out of business, Mike. But anyhow,
is the Simpsons Arena, which I always love. So I'm watching I'm just real aside. I'm watching The Simpsons today for a second with my son, and there's this hilarious scene where Homer is walking along with Bart and says, "Wait till I tell you the story of someday. I'll tell you the crazy story of how the Quebec Nordiques became the Colorado Avalanche." It's just like out of nowhere. Love it. All right, here we go. All right, let's talk. I want to talk two things. We're going to talk Florida and the Islanders. That's our main thing today. But I want to weigh in for a second because a lot of people had texted me and wanted me to weigh in on the Toronto series you guys talked about. Just briefly, let's give my 2 cents in the Toronto series. Okay. I wrote about it today.
It's more like a set and a half. But yeah.
Well, no. And I'm first of all, I know that you guys already talked about it. My thinking on this series is well, first of all, it's incredibly interesting in terms of obviously you've got one team that the Leafs has scored 60 more goals than Columbus. Columbus has let up 40 less goals. Mm-hmm. The save percentage, and goals against average are way in Columbus's favor, obviously. And we've talked about Frederik Andersen, who's played really well at times, despite not good numbers. But really has kept the Leafs in games. But the thing I thought the most, I talked to somebody about it, I wrote in my article today, is this concept of, can the Leafs work as hard as the Columbus Blue Jackets at the end of the day? Like, that to me is the biggest thing, because so far this Leafs team totally overpowered with skill, like just ridiculous amounts of skill, has shown that if you work hard against them, like the Carolina game we saw with the Zamboni goalie in there. If you work hard against the Leafs, they can look average if they're being outworked, and there's nobody that outworks teams better than Columbus. That to me is, I think, the key to the whole thing. I just want to throw that out there. I want to know your opinion on that, Mike.
Well, I pretty much said a similar thing. The Leafs have been a roller coaster all year. I don't think it's as much work ethic as it is a lack of ability to play a structured defense. They have a lot of skill players, and skill players inherently don't want to play in their own zone. They want to fly. Right. They want to go in the offensive zone. They want to create. They want to score. That's not a game. That's not a type of game that's conducive to the playoffs. You have to work. You have to work on the boards. You can't give up the puck. One giveaway by a fourth line player can kill you in a playoff series. Yeah. I think their forwards are much better than Columbus's forwards, even with everybody except Josh Anderson back. I think that Columbus's defense is leaps and bounds better than Toronto's, and I think the goaltending is a slight advantage for Anderson, because right now you have two goalies and you don't know who the number one is for Columbus. But I mean, the thing is, Toronto is going to have to play a game against a type of team that they don't match up well against, because they have a work ethic and they're defensively sound like Boston, like other teams in the East. Yeah. But the problem is that more than likely Columbus is going to have to be perfect and win games 2-1 or 3-2, because they don't have the offense that Toronto does. But Toronto might give them more chances because defensively at times they're inept.
And just so you know, I picked the Leafs to win. Mike picked the Leafs to lose. Just so you know.
I picked Columbus in 5 because I don't know whether they can change their nature. If they
I'm
can,
kind of with you on that, Mike. I mean, when I looked at it more and more, I looked at it, I actually think the goaltending advantage goes to Columbus. But
what?
that's
no. It's the defensive advantage more. It's the defensive advantage. I mean,
it's the holistic thing. But the other thing is this:
your Freddie Anderson undercurrent is coming out again. No. It is.
Here's the thing about Freddie Anderson. Okay,
go ahead.
He is at the goals that Freddie Anderson lets up when he's that cause him trouble are when teams are firing from all over the ice at him. He is one of those goalies who's very, very good at the expected type shots. Like very good at long shots from the outside. Really good at controlling his rebounds. There's certain things Anderson does incredibly well. But when you throw pucks at him, and this is what Boston's done in the past playoffs as well. When you throw pucks at him, you can score from weird angles and do some weird things to him. Well, that's all Columbus does. That's how Columbus plays.
I think it's less that in terms of the two series against Boston. Then he played 66 games in both years and facing the most shots in the NHL in both years. Yeah. And Boston was throwing the puck at the net because he was basically burnt. Now he's not going to be burnt this year. If you know Anderson and you do, he struggles at 2 times during the year, in the month of October and at the end of the year when he's been playing too much. And what's the problem with this? You've taken 4 months off, and it's going to be like starting a playoffs in October. Yeah,
it's going to be like October.
That's the concern. But honestly, if you take it evenly right now, I think Tortorella doesn't know who he's going to start in that series. He's probably going to go with Korpisalo to start. Because he went with Korpisalo after he was injured, and Merzlikins had that great month in February, but he went back to Korpisalo, and Korpisalo played well, and Korpisalo has been the number 1 for them, so he's at least going to start with him.
Here's my thinking. Maybe here's my thinking on that. Elvis is the kind of goalie that's set up to stop a skilled team like the Leafs. He's that side to side Bobrovsky type goalie.
He may eventually get in there, but I don't know if he'd start.
I think they're going to go with him. From what I've heard.
No, I was saying I think he might. I think Elvis might start, but the issue that I have is, and Torts will definitely try and keep the score down, and he will play it tight the whole series. Columbus scoring is a problem. It's always going to be a problem with these players they have. It will be a problem.
There's no question, and that's where Columbus gets a break from playing against a team that's weak defensively. This is like and a goalie that's not great on weird angle shots. I mean, there's a little like Pecorini's a bad goalie on weird angle shots. We've seen this before. It's the same kind of thing, So I would go slightly in Columbus' favor. Let's move on to the Panthers and Islanders. I've talked about that now, so thanks for those who emailed about that. Here we go. Panthers and Islanders. Interesting history because, obviously these teams played in a really good series not too long ago, just a couple years ago, ending on a Tavares overtime goal. This year when they played each other, talk about not being able to score. The Panthers had all kinds of trouble scoring against the Islanders this year. Panthers lost all 3 games, put up only 4 goals in the 3 games that they played. The Islanders now, of course. We have to remember the Islanders were about as bad as you could be at the end of the NHL season. After the trade deadline, they lost 7 in a row, and despite making some pretty significant trades, I mean, the Pajot deal is a really big deal. Yet they continued to I was not a big fan of the Pajot trade. They re-signed him. I thought it was a lot to give up for a player that I think is not really what you think he is. What they think he is.
Third line center.
He's a third line center. He's getting paid like a second or first line center. And he'll be good for them. He'll do all kinds of things. He'll kill penalties. He's a good all around player. But I really think that this is. If there was a team the Islanders would want to play in the first round, it would probably be the Panthers. I think this is probably the best fit for them in some ways.
Well, let's put it in perspective because the Panthers had 78 points, and they were on the outside looking in when the season was paused. They were 3 points behind Toronto for third place. They're only 2 points behind the Islanders. So I think they're pretty much evenly matched in that respect. Based on Russ, and we noted how bad Bobrovsky was. They were going with Chris Dredger.
I know.
He was amazing for them.
Right.
He did well for them, too.
Incredible. In the 7 games he played,
But you know that they're going to go back to Bobrovsky because they spent $10 million on him. And that might be a disadvantage for them because the numbers for Varlamov and Greiss in that system with Barry Trotz, save percentage was .913 for both of them, or .914 for Varlamov, .913 for Greiss. They're probably going to go with Varlamov. I think you have to give – it's at least even and maybe a slight advantage for the Islanders in net. But the thing is, I think Florida is a better offensive team and probably a better defensive team.
I mean, I think Florida is a better offensive team. I give Florida a slight edge in the series because the odds of Bob still being this bad are not great. Like, he should do better. If Bob is just a little above NHL average, Florida's going to win this series because then I think the Islanders will have trouble scoring, even with Peugeot there. And I think they'll both be tightly contested and hard to, they'll both be defending their asses off because both coaches, this is going to be a series we're talking more about the coaching than anybody else because these are two Hall of Fame coaches. And so that's going to be the focus, which is good for the players. But at the end of the day, Florida does have more of the higher end players than the Islanders. But if Bob isn't great, the Islanders are going to win.
I mean, Jan, the Islanders scored 192, gave up 193. So they were a -1 differential, but they gave up 35 less goals than the Panthers. I think the Panthers, the defensive players, meaning Ekblad and Yandel, Strawman, who's a little past his prime, are better than what the Islanders have. Yeah. But the Islanders play a better team defense than Florida does.
So I think a couple things. So first of all, clearly, as you said, the system that's employed by Trotz benefits Varlamov and Greiss, and I agree with you. I think Varlamov is going to be between the pipes. And defensively, you look at Leddy and Kulak, Taves and Boychuk, and probably Green and Pelech. And Pelech coming back is a huge benefit for the Islanders. In addition, their fourth line now gets Casey Cizikas back, who was hurt. So now you can roll out Martin, Cizikas, and Clutterbuck, which becomes a difficult fourth line to play against. And the Islanders also got Andrew Ladd back, for whatever that's worth, for the latter part of the season. And the addition of Peugeot lengthens that lineup substantially because he is their third line center, because Nelson by far is their number 2 center. On the flip side, for Florida, Alexander Barkov, in my opinion, got off to a pretty slow start this year and really found his gear. And you had Dadonov and Huberdeau that makes up a pretty good first line there. I'm curious to see the drop-off, especially now playoff-wise, going from Vincent Trocek, who wasn't great, to Eric Haula, who I'm not necessarily sold on. And to me, that's a huge drop-off, in my opinion. And then you talked about in goal. I do agree that they're going to go with Bobrovsky, regardless of whether or not he deserves to be in. But the fun question that has to be asked is, if Bobrovsky gets beat game 1, do they immediately go back to Dredger, especially given, as you said, 7.201, 2.05 goals against, again, 938 save percentage? Will they be willing to pull the plug on a goalie who's got 6 years and $60 million left in the system? Or do they feel the pressure that they have to go and keep Bobrovsky between the pipes, even though he got grossly outplayed towards the latter part of the season?
And they're going to keep Bob in there for at least a couple of losses. They're going to.
Well, 3 and you're done.
I know, but it doesn't matter.
They're going to have to go down 2-0 with Bobrovsky before they make that switch. No, but the thing is, though, if you look at the key matchups, though, Barkov is going to have to blow away whoever he matches up with as the top line matchup. Maybe Trotz goes with a checking line against Barkov's line, because Florida's number 2, if it's Haula, if whoever the number 2 center is, I think the Islanders win that battle. So Barkov has to win the center battle.
You're right, Mike. Line. But here's the thing about that: Haula usually plays with Huberdeau and Hoffman, and that gives you. So you're putting that. And they do that obviously for a reason, right? So that they call that their second line in Florida. Honestly, when I was doing some research on this, which is like, but Huberdeau is their top scorer. Hoffman's their third leading scorer. So to me, that's their
Hoffman's playing for a contract, so he's going to be motivated.
And
if you go against Haula with Barkov, who is not a defensive player, obviously, you have to deal with the fact you're dealing with the top 2 of the best scorers on the Panthers team on the ice at that point.
Yeah, and look, I love Matt Barzal. I think this will be a tight series if Bob is at the top of his game. But if Bob is playing near what he should, I really do think the Islanders are going to have a hard time winning this series. The other thing that we should look at is when we're talking about the fourth line matchups. I mean, third line for the for Florida, Brett Connolly has done well in the playoffs.
Yes.
He's been a guy that has been able to put the puck in the net. And so is Noel Arcieri. He's got plenty of playoff experience. Now that he's there, he was surprisingly good in the playoffs too. So I think it's interesting because I don't know if Florida would have made it. I don't think they would have. But now that they're there, they have some players that they got in hopes that they would be there.
And Noel Acciari is going for the Brandon Peary the Brandon Peary Award for the most goals without assists. He had 20 goals this year with 7 assists, which is
the Cy Young Award.
Yes.
Yeah.
But
an interesting thing here that
look, if Bobrovsky plays like he did for Columbus last year,
yes,
Florida has more than a puncher's chance against them. But if not, then as you said, Russ, if they wait to go down 2-0, which very well could be the case, a lot of nooses tightened, and that's going to maybe make Hoffman even less likely to come back next year because we know as of a month or two before the season called it for the pandemic, there was substantive rumors that Florida was going to be cutting a healthy amount of salary, which partly led to the Trocheck deal and some other deals that have been talked about in terms of moving some assets.
An undercurrent of this series, though, Quenneville has always had Barry Trotz's number in head-to-head matchups. He always dominated him when it was Chicago versus Nashville. Even though Chicago had an advantage in terms of the talent, just a little bit. He always seemed to know how to neutralize Trotz.
This is a really good point. That's a really good point. Trotz and Quenneville. That's a really good point, Mike. They have had their battles. They know each other very well.
But the weird thing, and we've talked about this when we talked about the Panthers on the show before. We know how Quenneville is when it comes to he's got his players and the players that are not his players. He'll play them out of position or he'll play them not at all. And he's played Mike Matheson and Mark Pysyk on the wing this year.
Yeah,
two guys, two defensemen who are not exactly giant, dynamos offensively. I know this because Pysyk scored a hat trick against Toronto.
And that's not what they envisioned for Matheson when they gave him too much money.
Right. So, this is sort of an odd – these are two very imperfect teams at this point, and it's a question of who limits their flaws the most to get a first-round victory. But I don't know if I see either one of them advancing after this round because I think they have too many flaws.
Well, I think Florida could. If Bob got hot, Florida yes.
I think defensively they're not that good.
If the Islanders get the Flyers, they're gonna take them. The Islanders just own the Flyers. So there's certain things. It's certain things that I really think that Islanders should take the Flyers.
But here's what I look at. Even Varlamov at his best, if Bob is at his best, he's going to be better than Varlamov. And I do think Bob is capable of stealing another round if they're playing well, because that is a team that has good speed. That is a team that can score, but also has good coaching. And that coach doesn't leave those guys out there to die on shifts. He knows what to do with them, and he does know how to change it up. I do think they could be dangerous if they get around. I think if the Islanders get around, if it's going to depend to me on how they do it. That's to see if they even can move on.
And just to mention this, because we mentioned it with Montreal and it was an unknown, Florida signed Gregory Denisenko, and we don't know whether that contract, probably it's not going to be the case that contract is a 1920 contract rather than a 2021 contract. Right. If it's for 1920, you could see Denisenko possibly get in the lineup like Romanov will get in the lineup for Montreal, because the one thing that we know for Florida, they like players who have skill, who can he could fit with a Barkov, he could fit with on a third line if they want to get extra offense. So that's a possibility. It's remote, but it's a possibility.
Yeah, I think it's remote.
Here, to me, this reminds me, a little bit of. Well, before I say that, there's two things I wanted to get out here. There's two big disparities between these two teams, and both of them will be interesting to see how they play out. One is that the Panthers are way better on the power play than the Islanders are. The Islanders Islanders on the power play were like 25th or so in the league. They really struggled. They scored on, I think, 17% of their chances or something like that. It really not really a bad power play for the Islanders, where the Panthers were, around 8th or somewhere in there. They're in there. But here's that I always think it's goaltending and special teams in the playoffs. I always think those are the two biggest things. But here's the other thing: the Panthers had 1,247 hits this season. Okay, so that ranks out to about 18 a game roughly, which put them at 27th in the NHL for that. The Islanders had 700 more hits than them, 1915. which puts the Islanders at 28. So that's 10 more hits per game than the Panthers. The Islanders are the number 1 hitting team in the NHL. So think about that. That to me is how much hitting are we going to see?
Well, here's another. Yeah, there will be definitely a lot of hitting because the coaches like it. But here's another factor. Now that we, think there's going to be a playoffs and we know there's going to be a big taxi squad, does Henrik Borgstrom hang around? Because, again, he is a big center who could score. Yeah. He just hasn't done a lot of it yet, but he's young in his career. You almost would believe that Florida would like to have him hanging around.
I think you're going to see that. I talked to somebody today who works for one of the teams, and they say they really are going to, with some of the guys that they have hanging around, like you're saying. Yeah, this is like a lot of these teams are taking this whole quarantine thing as like an ultimate like team bonding type experience, right? Like this is so you want to have guys who are going to be part of your future there. You want to get them involved. You want to get them around the players. So that they all get closer, so that they all go through that. So I think you're going to see players like that.
In that case, Russ, Owen Tippett, who had 40 points in 46 games in the AHL this year.
And he's got a great shot. Like if you just brought in Owen Tippett just to throw him on the second power play, you might get a couple goals.
So now, you see any of them make it in the lineup.
In terms of your numbers, right? You talked about hits. But remember, look at Martin, Clutterbuck, Cizikas, Komarov. That's almost 600 hits amongst the four. I mean, that's in essence their game, which is why I said that fourth line is what the Islanders use to turn the tide in games where they're struggling and send them out to not necessarily generate offense, but more so generate a switch in terms of mentality in the game and turn the tide. And that's what that line does. I mean, that's kind of what they're known for.
They will beat you mentally.
Yeah, but can Clutterbuck handle that now? I know he got through the season, but it wasn't a full season. And now with this time off, you don't know if that's good or bad. He has a bad back. Like, you don't know if how to make it through.
But Cizikas is back. You throw him as the fourth line center. You can move down Komarov to the third line, and you can potentially play Brassard on the wing if you want to.
I was going to say, how far are they going to go with that? Are they going to go to like the Ross Johnston and have him come out there and just mow?
No, but those guys are legitimate fourth line. I mean, that's been their fourth line for a while. I mean, that's been something that's been a hallmark of that team.
Well, just to paint the picture here of the difference, and maybe whoever said this regarding Bobrovsky is right. Bobrovsky had a 900 save percentage. He was 4 games over 500, 23, 19, and 6. Dredger in 12 games went 7-2-1 and had a 938.
Yeah, I just said it before, the 205 goals against average.
I mean, Mike, that's that is
Bob still has to lose 2 games. Trust me, Quenneville. Even as much as Quenneville is going to want to advance in the playoffs, he's also knowing that Chris Dredger is not his goalie next year.
You guys remember when Chicago played Nashville in the playoffs and Nashville swept them in 4 games? When you're looking at a situation where I guess at that point you have Laviolette as for the Predators,
right? But
you saw lots of situations in the past where when you talk about a lot of these things, the Predators always out hit the Blackhawks. Like there's a lot of similarities here between the way these teams play. I mean, obviously the Blackhawks had a much better power play than the Predators always, much more skilled than the Predators always. The Predators worked on the team game. It's interesting the parallels between those two teams and these two teams. I mean, these two teams are not nearly at the level that the Predators.
This Nashville team, this was past the recent Grand Forks Mayor Brandon Bochenski's era, right, in Nashville?
Maybe.
Honestly, the thing that was popping up in my head was I remember one of those Nashville-Chicago series, and I don't know whether Trotz had already left, but they started Scott Darling in the first one.
No, this was that he was still there. That was still Quenneville and Trotz coaching.
Okay.
At that point, for sure. I mean, the Predators and the Predators had a while there where they couldn't beat the Blackhawks in the playoffs. The Blackhawks were taking them out all the time. And then, that year that everyone thought the Blackhawks were going to be much better, the Predators magically swept them. But that was Laviolette's first year.
So what do we think prediction wise on this series?
Man, this is a really hard one, right? I'll let you guys go first.
No, you go first. No,
I'll go first.
Go ahead, Jan.
I'm going to go Islanders in 4. I like Florida. I do think I have no faith in Bobrovsky right now. And granted, like I said, if he's reverts back to prior form of last year, which is what earned him that big contract, then I do think it goes. I think it goes 5, and Columbus could win. But I just think overall, I think the Islanders are a better team. And as you mentioned, I think physical play is going to matter here. I do think they're going to generate turnovers off that physical play, and their elite offensive guys or their upper tier offensive guys are going to capitalize and score.
I'll go Islanders in 5, and I have to say, if Bobrovsky lets down in this series, is Dale Talon in real trouble because he gave this guy $10 million a year for 7 years?
Not yet. He'd have to have another bad season.
Okay.
I'm going to go Florida in 5 because I also think Florida has the most dominant face-off guy for both teams in Barkov, and that's going to matter.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that we haven't even talked about. The Islanders are good at face-offs, don't get me wrong, but Barkov is a shark.
Yeah.
Okay, Ak.
All right. I think that we're going to see I think I'm going to go with the Panthers in 5 as well. But I honestly think it could go either way. I just think the Islanders need to get their act together here. I think they can. I think the Panthers will definitely see this as like a new lease on life.
Yeah.
Remember, the Islanders started off as one of the best teams in the league this year, and then really tumbled. The Panthers, facing injuries all year in different situations, and having the Bob, they never really got it together. But they feel like a team that could get it together. So if Bob plays half decently, they're going to win the series. They don't need them much more than that.
I have to bring this up because we talked about it yesterday because it was the anniversary. And not the specific the goal or but yesterday was the anniversary of the Patrick Kane goal, the Cup winner in 2010. And I watched about 10 minutes of it, and I had to say, I was stunned at seeing Braden Coburn and saying, "Wow, Braden Coburn can actually skate." Because now
he could.
Yeah, because back then he was a fairly mobile. I think Timonen was still.
That was absolutely the best Coburn ever played in his career. That right.
You know what it was about Coburn? He was a great puck retrieval guy. He was, he'd hit you once in a while, but he was a really good puck retrieval guy, and he had long arms. And back when he could skate, very effective.
But the other thing was, nobody remembers on that 2010. I mean, everybody remembers that Chicago had Kane and Taves and Hossa. But they had the secondary guys like Versteeg and Boland and Bufflin.
Yeah.
But then a guy who was a key player on that team was John Madden, who won cups with New Jersey.
Yeah. I felt like Boland was a better version of Madden because Boland
he was a younger version of.
Yeah, he was winning faceoffs. He was doing great shorthanded. But yeah, Madden was there.
But to have experience with the Devil, that meant a lot to that team. It really did.
But to have him as a fourth line guy, Russ, that was And then if you think a couple years later. This was a smart thing that Stan Bowman did. He kept adding these veteran guys to be role players. He added Brad Richards, and Brad Richards was good for them in the playoffs. So that is a formula that generally
did win a cup with them too.
Yeah. So
it's funny. I remember Coburn in that series very specifically, Mike, which is really funny. I didn't watch it last night, but I remember telling Russ or whoever was with us in the press box about Coburn. My thing with him always was
you always had a thing.
He was with him. I did. He's like Voracek now. But with Coburn back then, if he was playing confidently and skating straight ahead and just doing his and not thinking, he was great. Like his issue was he overthought everything on the ice. Like it felt like his thought process slowed him down because and I remember we did the show I had called FlyerBuzz TV on Comcast. Bill Clement had a segment on that where we would have one player that we isolated the entire game, and Clement would talk to them about something, right? Like Clement would say, "Okay, let's watch your isolation and watch what happens here." And one of those players we had on was Braden Coburn. So sorry, I'm just fixing my light here. So Coburn was on, and so we had a game where it was just I'll never forget this. Clement and I just sat there and I watched the entire thing as they were filming it, and Clement isolated Coburn, and there were so many instances where Coburn said during that interview, it's like, yeah, I was thinking a little too much there. I thought this guy was coming down the wing here. And you could see it. Like, it was so clear that when he stopped thinking, he was a much better defenseman. Like, he was just one of those guys that he had great instincts. I think his actual instincts as to what to do were really good. But man, he struggled.
Yeah, and Timonen was impressive too. I mean, obviously, I remember him more. Yeah. The thing I remember the most about him is how bad he was in his last year with Chicago, and how they couldn't put him out on the ice, and they had to play, Trevor Van Riemsdyk 20+ minutes because Timonen really couldn't play that well anymore. But just bring this up and see what you guys, because I've seen some debate on Twitter about this, about the fact that the votes are out for the PHWA for the different awards, and really these play-in rounds, the playoffs really start when it goes down to 16, and they'll be voting on teams, for example, that would normally, like Florida wouldn't have been in the playoffs. So how can normally you can't, people shy away from voting for anybody on a team that doesn't make the playoffs for a regular season award, but that really doesn't pertain this year because 24 teams have sort of made the playoffs. I mean, there are some people who think Artemi Panarin deserves votes for the Hart, and I don't balk at that because he had a fantastic year with the Rangers, but they're not a playoff team until they beat Carolina in the first round of the play-in. So you sort of have to throw that out this year because of the unusual playoff format.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah, it's a tough call. You're right. It's a good point.
I don't think the extra games make that big of a difference. I mean, I understand the viewpoint, but you haven't made a decision right now. I'm not sure if the 3 to 4 games are making that substantive of a difference at this point in time.
Well, they weren't a lock to make it, and now they're making it. So I think that's all they're.
Yeah, to me, it's not about like how they do in those games. It's
right.
Are they a playoff team or not?
Right.
And they're were they going to be a playoff team if the season just continued as it was? The Rangers coming on strong. They could have been. I mean, they really.
But with Shesterkin hurt, they probably weren't going to be.
But he was back already.
Yeah, he did, but he missed a few games, and that may have hurt them for their.
They
were 2 points back with 12 games to go.
Right.
You'll never know. I mean, if you remember my projected NHL standings, which really got shafted this year by the coronavirus, my projected final NHL standing.
You're really
screwed up
coronavirus. I spent a lot of time on.
The inhumanity of it all.
Gone wrong. My projected NHL final standings were the ones that suffered the most.
We didn't agree with them anyway, so don't worry about it.
Well, the Rangers were making the playoffs. I'll tell you that. The last one that they had, the Rangers were going to make the playoffs because they had the record coming down the stretch against teams. Good records against the teams they were going to play against, and they were on a roll. They had it. I mean, it was possible.
Heck, we do have real news out of Montreal. Jeff Molson was talking. A guy named John Lane, who writes for NHL.com, was tweeting it out. Some interesting things. He did give Bergevin basically a vote of confidence, saying he really likes what he's doing. He's respected, whatever. He still doesn't have they don't have a president of hockey ops. And to me, that is bizarre because this is the Montreal Canadiens. They could have 10 of them if they wanted to. Money is not an issue.
Yeah, right.
I don't know why they're giving Bergevin all this power in the front office. That is unusual, and I think that's something where Jeff Molson should acquiesce to some of his experts there other than Bergevin and say, yeah, there's a reason you have that. So that to me is interesting. The other thing that really stood out was they have a practice facility in Brossard, and it's going to open. Well, actually, they said ready Monday, so I guess it's ready, or next Monday. I'm not sure what that means for phase 2. But there's only 3 players in Montreal who are going to be able to use it. 3. Yep. That is all that stayed in Montreal.
Yeah, wow. Because Montreal was a hot spot.
Yeah. Wow, that's crazy.
So who knows where all their players are? So
they're not. I mean, they're going to be opening camp probably in who knows where, like in.
Well, I mean, Weber is probably in BC, and
in the U.S. somewhere, right? They'll be opening.
Or he could be in Nashville if he kept a home there.
But if you want to talk about,
think the Maple Leafs will have their camp in Buffalo, Mike? I've heard that.
There's been some rumor about that, but the thing is, it's not.
Doesn't help anybody, of course, because you're not going to be allowed to go to it. But
it's not going to be much of a difference, exactly, because there's not going to be any difference. But here, take a look at this, just to end the show here.
This is the big shirt reveal.
Okay, the shirt reveal.
I have no idea.
Why does it do that?
We don't know, but the New York Jets picture is something I took, and it was opening day, and so they had the flag on the field.
It's a green T-shirt, so it's like a green screen.
The picture is not behind on somehow. Russ, you have a green screen setting on your thing somehow that you don't know about.
I even reset the avatar. Like, I don't know where the green screen setting is, but it's
okay. No, just check. Just click settings. Okay. And there's an option for green screen.
Yeah, that's got to be.
Shut that off. Let's see if it shuts it off.
All right, but where is the actual settings?
On the underneath the private chat thing on the right. This is exciting for everybody out there. Hope you guys are enjoying this as we talk about our app settings.
I don't even see it. That's the funny thing. I don't even see a settings thing. I see mute, stop cam,
Wait,
mic.
you see comments? Come on, comments down there. Private chat settings. See that on the right?
Private chat, live comments. Maybe I got to expand the screen. Hold on.
It's downward facing.
It's not even there on my screen.
Wow.
That's weird. All right, well.
Yeah, I'm using Chrome and it's not, but I'm using it on a.
Try on the bottom. And is there a thing that says camera mic?
Yes.
Click on that.
Yeah, click on that. There's a green screen.
Ah. But I've never even used this. There we go.
There you go.
There you go.
I've never even used that setting. It's bizarre that all of a sudden something changed and it went to that. I don't even know how it loaded that picture because that's a picture that just exists like on my website and on my computer.
So now we know if we wear that color T-shirt, which we won't.
I do have a portable green screen. I should bring it in. I didn't know that. I didn't know I could even do that. I'll do that.
Yeah, I knew we could do it in Google. I didn't know we could do it on this. So now,
yeah, I think that's relatively new on this.
So you don't have to put up the backdrops that
fall down. I know. Yeah.
But the other thing to talk about, I guess, is we only brushed it. Is the practicing. So now we know, even though the league is saying, hey, we want everybody to, they want a date where everybody can be the same and competitive.
Yeah.
I don't think the Canadians could have that because if they only have 3 players left behind, all these other players are going to be coming from different places, like not the Islanders, the Flyers, as an example. I bet you they've got 10 to 12 guys already on the ice.
Yeah, I bet they do too. Because they know that so many of them live here and stay here.
Yeah. And so, this is a disadvantage for the Canadians. And I also think, the Rangers will have a disadvantage because not all of them were going to stay in New York. Everybody got out of New York. So that's going to put them at a disadvantage. Same with the Islanders. That's, I bet you a lot of them left. So this is now going to be the part where it's going to be hard for Gary Bettman to find a date.
Really hard.
To say everybody's on an even playing field. I think he should just concentrate more on the date where he just says, this is training camp and that's it. I think he does need to come out with that.
I think you have to do that because, I hope they do at least. It makes sense. You're right, Russ.
Because we haven't even, maybe it's happening and we don't know, but we haven't even heard where, I don't know, Henrik Lundqvist is flying back, right? We don't know about these things.
Right.
We don't know. You're absolutely right. We have no way of knowing.
And we won't know unless the teams let us know because no press is allowed in the practice facility.
No, but we would see social media posts hey, I'm flying back to America.
Yeah, that's the team letting us know. That's what I'm saying. It's they're not going to have any extra personnel at the practice facility, so we'll only know who is there based on what the teams tell us.
Right. You're right. Interesting.
So
it's all going to be kind of fascinating. I'm hoping, that teams will take some video of it. You would assume, right?
Right, and I'm hoping that
I think they're going to have ghost cams there, Eck. I think they're just how
they should just hang GoPros in the corner. You're right.
That's what I think they're going to do.
They're trying to capture a Siberian tiger or something like that.
Right. Yeah, or bear.
Or a bear.
Or bear. Yeah, that's right. These guys, they don't know, but our camera caught a bear today. I was really excited. Our show cam.
In the corner, he was nomming on a laptop that was left out.
Right. There was an arm hanging out of his mouth, but besides that, it was cool. Yeah, awesome stuff.
So tomorrow, we'll talk about the New Jersey Devils.
Okay, yeah, we can do that.
Okay,
that sounds like fun.
Are we going to talk about their owner trying to buy the New York Mets? Is that what we're going to?
Yeah, we can talk about that too. Sure.
There you go. That sounds like fun. Yeah, right.
Baseball's all
sounds like fun.
Howdy, folks. Happy.
Oh, sorry. I got. That was
on it.
Someone was telling me something that we had to check out here, so I'm trying to see if I can do it.
What are you checking out?
I'm going to show you something here if it would work, but I don't know if it will or not. But anyway.
I'll save it for tomorrow.
Yeah, I'll save it for tomorrow. It's fine. All right. Anyway, there you have it. All right. Howdy, folks. We will talk to you again tomorrow. Remember, folks, without the buzz, it is just hockey. We will talk to you then.